Hello, everyone. Hola. A wise woman once told me, we don't inherit fear from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And that was a profound statement that always stuck with me. I was born in India, the most populated country in the world, with 1.4 billion people. It is a magnificent country with rich culture and heritage. They have 22 official languages in India. It is also the world's biggest democracy. And as most of you may know, it also has some of the world's best cities. However, there are a lot of social problems in India. It is the third highest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. If you look at the amount of plastic waste that gets emitted into the ocean, India accounts for 12% of it. And approximately 10% of the population lives under the poverty line, which is $2.15 a day. That's 136 million people. Of the top 10 most polluted cities in the world, India has 5. And I was born in one of them, New Delhi. I lived in New Delhi till I was 8 years old, which was when my family and I moved to Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea, in the Pacific Islands. Has anyone ever heard of Papua New Guinea? Yes, that's very surprising. It couldn't be any more different to India. There was wide open spaces, beautiful islands, fresh air, hardly any people. It was an amazing upbringing. We used to do extraordinary things for fun. There was no cinema, there was no technology, there was no iPhones, all we had was fishing and sports and going on the boat. Growing up later in life, in 2013, I moved to the Cook Islands for work. It is a beautiful place. The whole country only has a population of 15,000 people, and 10,000 of those live on one island. I got married in this place, Akshay, which I still believe is the most beautiful place. Then in 2015, I moved to Fiji, which I still call my home. Fiji is very different to the Cook Islands. It's an amazing Melanesian culture. And as you would have noticed over the last few days or since you arrived in Fiji, some of the kindest, most hospitable people in the world. It is the place that I want my children to grow up, because you learn the great values of life. As I got older, I used to go back to India about once a year to visit my grandparents, who I was very close to. And as I kept going back, I used to enjoy it less and less. And I couldn't really figure out why. It was only later in life, when I was an adult, that I realized that I used to enjoy it less and less because of all the pain and suffering I used to see every single time I set foot outside the door. And those of you who have been to India, it is a wonderful country, but it's very hard to avoid the things that you see. We talk about poverty, right? We talk about poverty and not being able to having money. We're talking about inflation in a lot of the world. But in India, poverty is not being able to feed your children. Right? And I tried to help in some ways, donated for a child to go to school, donated money to a slum. But I always felt that I was just one tiny drop in the ocean. And what can one person do? So I dealt with it the only way I knew how. I used to go back to India less and less. Every time I went back, I used to go outside the house less. And when my grandmother passed away in 2017, that was the last time I visited. Which is actually very sad, because I have a 7-year-old son. And I will take him back, of course. But usually you are quite bonded to the place you come from. But this is now my home. I've lived and worked in the Pacific Islands for the last 15 to 20 years. My world changed on the 5th of May 2016, when my son Taj was born, and then my daughter 4 years later. And most of you who are parents know that your life changes. you have a totally different perspective on life. Right? You do everything you can to protect them. It's all about their education. And I suddenly had this feeling that I could no longer sit back and ignore the problem. Because what kind of father was I that I wasn't doing something to protect the next generation or the place that they might call home? My biggest fear is that in my lifetime, that this beautiful country that we currently call home will become like the situation that we see in a lot of parts of Asia, where the oceans are filled with trash, poverty is extremely high, a country that has 40% of its GDP dependent on tourism is at significant risk if it looks like that. People come here for the pristine environment, for the beautiful oceans. In 50 years' time, and that's what it is. What then happens to the employment as tourism numbers go down? In January this year, I had an extraordinary experience. I'm a scuba diver, as you can tell. And one Saturday morning, I was scuba diving near my home, which is about an hour away from here. It was 9 in the morning, and I was 20 feet below the ocean. And as I looked into a cave, I saw a turtle's head. I got the fright of my life, and I went back a little bit, and the turtle came out of the cave, looked me in the eyes, and then swam away. And I remember in that moment thinking, wow, I am so lucky that I get to come face to face with such a beautiful creature in the ocean. Fast forward 8 hours later, on that same day, I went for a walk on the beach with my family, my wife, my 2 young children, who were 6 and 2 at that point. And to my absolute horror, what had washed up on the beach were handfuls of plastic. And this is where a 5-star resort is. So this is not people walking around throwing rubbish. It is coming from the ocean, right onto that beach. And I had this moment of despair where I thought, what's the point? Well, again, I'm just one person. Why do I care if this is what's going to happen? And then despair turned to hope. Without saying anything, my 6-year-old son started walking around the beach and picking up trash. My 2-year-old daughter started helping. And as I put all that trash into the bin, my 2-year-old daughter said to me, "Good job, Daddy." And I thought, there is hope. And where does that hope come from? It comes from what I like to call, and what I believe in, is sustainability champions. Now, I call myself a sustainability champion, and we are not the people who fix all the problems of the world. Absolutely not. We are those people in the business who are constantly nipping at the heels of management alliance to say, hey, can we do better here? Can we divert some of this money towards local charities and local communities? Should we really be buying that product that has plastic all over it? Is there an alternative solution? And imagine what we could do if there was a sustainability champion in every tourism business, in every department, in every family. So I set my sights on doing in my own little company, as I'm an employee here, becoming a sustainability champion. And I'd like to share a few examples of those. We've implemented weekly beach cleanups. Every Saturday morning, where we invite guests and staff to come and help pick up the trash. We pick up 20 to 30% every Saturday morning. Now, not only do our staff get involved, this photo here is a bunch of interns that came, but they also got put to work as to pick up trash, because it's about creating values. It's saying that this is what we believe in. If you want to come work for us, this is how you think. And this happens every week, no matter what. Rise Beyond the Reef is an amazing NGO in Fiji that supports artisans from 31 remote indigenous communities around the country. They make these beautiful handicraft products. So about 12 months ago, we started putting Rise Beyond the Reef in all our brochures. We started suggesting them for all our big conferences and meeting groups. 2 weeks ago, I walked into my office to see one of our lovely ladies in events putting together Rise Beyond the Reef bags for a group. So our job as a tourism operator is simply creating opportunities for these small NGOs and community funds to be able to drive income. And that is the power that we have. Today is the last day of October, which is Pinktober. So we've got a variety of different initiatives to support cancer. So what we did at one of our resorts is we had a beach party and we said we donate 10% of the sales towards Fiji Cancer Society. There was 200 people there. We also said that there was a Pink Lady cocktail and $5 from every cocktail sale in the month of October will go towards Fiji Cancer Society. We created a spa treatment where 10% of sales goes towards that. And we will probably put together about $20,000 for Fiji Cancer Society by the end of this month. That is just the power of tourism, is diverting revenue, sales, maybe profit, towards some of these initiatives around the country to make positive change. At the end of September, I wanted to do an initiative called Shave It or Save It. Basically, I wanted to try and raise $5,000. And if I reached my goal of raising $5,000 for Wales Against Fiji, which looks after child cancer patients in Fiji, I would shake my head. But all I did was I asked my general manager, hey, do you want to be involved with me? I asked a couple of other people. That turned into 19 people in our management team. And we set a pledge to raise $40,000 by the end of October. As of today, we are at $45,000. So next Wednesday, this beautiful head of hair is going to be absolutely bald, unfortunately. But $45,000 to $50,000 towards Wales and Fiji, which is their single biggest donation that they've ever had. And all it took is for us, a resort in Fiji, to reach out to our partners and say, this is a great cause, please donate. We give you hundreds of thousands of dollars of business every year. This is something you should contribute to this. There is a village 1 kilometer away from our resort, a 5-star resort, that does not have any running water and has not for the last 7 years. And they cannot get the help from the government that they need. And they've tried their very hardest through the media, but nobody's helped. So what we did was we brought our engineering team in. We went and tried to figure out what the problem was, and figured out there was 2 issues. One was they didn't have drinking water, and one was they didn't have running water. So we went and bought 10 tanks so that the government could come and deliver drinking water for that village. We're also now working with the Ministry of Health to get one of their bore pumps working to get the water through the pipes so they can have running water for the first time in 7 years. But to us, that's not a big deal, right? It didn't cost that much money. We have the expertise, we have engineering people, we have plumbers. All we needed was focus towards some of these initiatives. Now, the missing piece in all of this, right? Private sector can go and fix all these problems. But how do we stop from the problem to be created in the first place? Education. And as I did a bit of research for this event, I was actually pleasantly surprised that orange line is Fiji of 100% of children completing lower secondary school education. And tertiary education is 14%. Better than I thought, but it's still only 14%. So the question that I have for myself is, how do we ingrain a change of thinking and a change of mindset into the younger generation when only 14% of them are getting tertiary education? It needs to go into the primary schools. So how do we as private sector work with the primary schools in our areas to make sure that it's part of their curriculum? It is not. Just waste management, plastic pollution, climate change. These are unknowns in the South Pacific. Nobody would even know what it means. One of the amazing things about Fijian people is their immense gratitude for life. And I believe that they have this gratitude for life because they live in the moment. They don't think too far ahead in the future. And some of the biggest causes of anxiety is you think in the past, but you think in the future, you're not in the moment. So they have this incredible happiness But then what happens is we don't think too far ahead in the future. So it's someone else's problem. It's not our problem. So as I leave you today, I wanted to start you thinking about how can the education sector work with the tourism sector, which is the highest employer in the South Pacific, the highest income earner in the South Pacific, to make a positive change for environmental issues. I can guarantee you that we in this part of the world are not the creators of it. If you look at plastic pollution going into the ocean, number one is Philippines with 36%. Number two is India with 12%. Between those two countries, 48% of all the plastic pollution going into the oceans. So there is nothing we can do here in Fiji that's going to change that. But what we can do is change mindset and change decades of thinking and culture. And that comes through education. Climate change and global the rising of sea levels. We're the ones that get impacted. We are by far not the ones creating the problem. It is the big countries like China and US, India. So the amazing work that everyone does globally to try and move towards renewable energy and reduce carbon emissions is fantastic. But what do we do in the meantime? Because the biggest impact to us will be the biggest income earner and the biggest employer, tourism. Like I said before, the private sector can continue to try and fix the problem. But how can we work together to make sure the problem doesn't create itself in the first place? Thank you very much. I thought I'd leave it with I believe there's a few members of the USP here. We're very lucky to have all of you here in the room from all over the world with your education experience. We'd love to hear any comments or statements about your experiences and what we could do in this country to try and help. Because you've got the ears of the university, the biggest university. Throughout the course of the next few days, you also have people from the tourism industry. So what can we do, this tiny little nation, to help improve the situation with climate change?
Thank you very much, and good morning. My name is Agus Lukman from Sydney International Business School from Indonesia. Actually, I'd like to address one of the topics that actually already image that you've shown was on plastic. Actually, 2 weeks or 1 week ago, we attended, I think, possibly the first, and this is actually an ASEAN level on how to curb plastic, regulate, and basically be able to control plastic. And this is actually on a ASEAN regional level. But on the national level, we do have that. And it is also a problem in the region. So on that context, hopefully at least I can share with you, that will be something that if there are any, my apologies for the ignorance, if there's any Pacific Melanesian region that try to handle it, but actually more on that level. Secondly, actually the issue of plastic has been elevated to an international level. So coming up, I think maybe this coming this year or next year, there will be in Nairobi a convention, and hopefully be able to draft the first international convention, particularly on regulating and controlling plastic throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of my favorite places in the world is Bali, and I'm going there in January next year. That photo is from Bali, and I feel for the Balinese people, right, because that is again their livelihood. Such a tourism-dependent destination, and we've got surfers now going there saying, "I cannot come here anymore in Uluwatu because they're surfing amidst trash." So, in answer to your question, we're very lucky in Fiji that Tourism Fiji has taken a leadership position in climate change, sustainability. I don't know if there's any other tourism boards within the Pacific region that are doing the amazing work that they are. They became one of the first people to sign up for EarthCheck. And I know that they're going to be mandating for resort operators within this country to get levels of certification of EarthCheck to make sure that they're compliant before they receive funding in the future. So that's another great way to drive change is money. Do this or we will cut off the money. But look, it's fantastic to hear that, you know, obviously one of the largest populated regions in the world is trying to make change because, you know, we've talked about the Pacific Ocean patch, the garbage patch, which apparently nobody knows where it is, but it's huge, 3 times the size of Texas, circulating around the Pacific Ocean. So that is going to come to some of the Pacific Island nations. So we've got countries that are trying very hard to do this, and then some just don't know what to do. I know there's tiny Micronesian islands where there is no waste management, there is no waste disposal. The only way to do it is in the ocean. So if your government and your country cannot help, what are you supposed to do as a citizen of a developing nation? So the problem is large in both senses. One is obviously globally, the ones who are the mass producers, but also here from a waste management perspective. And there's another great foundation here, Waste Pacific Recycling Foundation, but they're trying very hard to make change here in PB. So we need people to be trying to drive change. Thank you.
Can I have a question?
I think we have another question here. Excuse me. And after I give you the one.
Thank you very much for such an inspiring talk. I'm Yan Chen. I'm the Associate Dean for International from National Cheng Chi University, Taiwan. We have a really well-known business, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. Well, even though we are, you know, enjoying the economic development due to the technology sector development, we also experience the consequences of overusage, the energy overusage. So the carbon emission per capita in Taiwan rank actually in the top 10 in the world. So in other words, that the older population in Taiwan have to bear the cost, the intangible cost. So actually what I'm seeing from your experience here is you are thinking about the balance between developing the tourism business and the environment, but we are actually have been through the process of development, the economy and the cost. So I think at least from this perspective, you are luckier than us because we are taking the consequences now. So what we try to do now is we, like many other developed countries, the government have to pay much more cost to solve the problem by, you know, renewable energy or waste production. And most importantly is how to advance another level of technology to efficient, to optimize the operation, to lower the cost and the pollution. So what I'm thinking here is the very moment I arrived Fiji, checking into the hotel, I noticed that the air conditioning is on all the time. So in other words, the energy consumption actually is the one to kill the environment. So I really think there is something we can justify when we deal with the energy overconsumption issue in this beautiful island. So I don't know what is the policy of the government in this regard. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a very good question, and your comments are very true. It's a very fine balance between over-tourism and tourism. We've seen the impact on some of the major tourist destinations. And what I believe we need to do is to find a great balance of sustainable tourism. Right? And that comes down to the country, but also a lot of the resorts and the operators. And now Fiji, like Rowan said, Fiji Airways is trying to do their part for a very small island nation. We are trying to start the renewable energy movement here. It is very slow. We don't have charging stations for vehicles. Tourism Fiji recently, to show leadership, recently removed all their petrol vehicles and changed to electric vehicles. They've also got solar panels on the roof, and they've got a charging station in their office. So it's a great start. But the drive from Nandi to Suva, which is across the coast of Fiji level, there are no charging stations. So you have to get there and back and hope that you make it. So of course, it's complex, infrastructure, as well as, at the moment, things like lithium batteries are so expensive. Tourism businesses want to go down that path, but they're struggling to find it is a huge upfront cost to invest in things like solar power in a place like Fiji, because we don't, everything's made in China, everything's, the developing world has, or the developed world has much better access to that. We're a small island nation. But the initial signs are great because it makes perfect sense. Every resort should have solar panels, every resort should have batteries to collect the energy and use that instead of electricity grids. How fast we will get there, I'm not sure. And I don't know what the government policy is, if I'm very honest with you. Thank you.
We are running now with the last question. Anita, please.
Actually, mine is not so much a question, it's a comment. And Akshay, before I begin, I want to say something in Hindustani, which is Gustaki Maaf, which means please forgive me and excuse me. A lot of panel just before this, we spoke about misinformation and fake news, and I believe you have been a victim of that too. If you just turn back to the image before this one, and the one before this also, one before, yes, this image. This image is definitely not an image of India. It's an image which was used in a news report about extreme poverty in Pakistan. It is not an image of India. So you're a victim of fake news and misinformation. I do believe the transition you have experienced from your country to this, my country to this country, is an experience many have also been through. And I do believe that the work that you're doing here is enormous, is beautiful, has created a wonderful impact. You are trying to rejuvenate, you're trying to cleanse the beaches, you're trying to do so much for another country. There is a Janam Bhumi, there is a Karam Bhumi. And if both are the same, it's wonderful. This is just my comment to you. This is not India, what you have projected here. Thank you very much from a loyal, patriotic Indian.
Thank you. And I basically didn't say that this is the image that I saw. Obviously, all my images are Google. And that is a very interesting reaction. Because I did a TED talk in February, and the amount of hate that I've got from Indians about my TED talk, about how can you talk against India? How can you say these things? It's a really interesting reaction. No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying about other people, right? And I think even my own family, and what I have said to those people in the past is, obviously, there is a problem, right? And I fear for India because it seems like the problem gets bigger and bigger. Right? So thank you for pointing that out. I think that was more provision. You can see that anywhere in India as you walk around.
I just wanted to set the record straight about that image.
Thank
which
you.
was wrongfully prevented.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gustaki Maaf.
Thank you. I think it's great to have these conversations, right? And I think the fact that it's created a reaction for people, and I've really enjoyed the conversations I've had afterwards, because I've tried to explain my perspective. Right? Thank you. And as I usually say to people, I'm one because my opinion is nothing. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.